What's up, people, and welcome back to Never Lag. I'm one of your hosts, Levi, joined by the man who fell in the pit, Zach. And this is another episode of This Week in Gaming, the show where we bring you the news, the reviews, and the hot takes from the past week in video games and deliver it straight to your magnificent ear holes. I assume they're magnificent.
They are
really
one of
know.
a kind, each and every one.
One of a kind.
One of a unanimous
like a snowflake.
kind. Like a mass-produced snowflake. Your ear holes are so beautiful.
According to Sony, they are definitely one of a kind. But anyways, if you're into it, you can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/neverlag. And then, of course, right here for free by doing what you're doing, watching here on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcasts from. So let's talk gaming news. How many stories we got this week?
We have 10 stories on the docket this week. A little slower than it has been in some of the past weeks. We have a very front-loaded year. A lot has happened. Everything that's happened in the first quarter or so of 2022 is could be its own year in video games. So I don't know. I think it's going to get quieter in coming weeks, but we do still have some stuff to talk about, thankfully. So I think we can get into it. Maybe most exciting for me, at least, is Lego Star Wars. I don't know about you, but this is something I played a lot as a kid. So our first story is actually a review roundup of the new Lego Star Wars game, the Skywalker Saga. So that just released. I forget the exact day, but that just released recently. It's sitting at a Metacritic of 83 and an OpenCritic of 82. So doing some decent work. This is also on my fantasy league that we always talk about, and
every game is on your fantasy.
Every game is on my fantasy list.
April 5th.
So it's been out
5th
2 days as of our recording. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it looks like it's doing fairly well. I didn't necessarily expect a Lego Star Wars game to be like hitting in the 90s. That would be great for my league, but 80s is what I was hoping for. So 82, 83, that's pretty respectable for a game that is just Legos, essentially. So we have a couple of reviews here that I think give a good sense of what the game feels like. We have Justin Towell from Games Radar Plus. He gives this game, or I guess Games Radar Plus gives this game 4.5 stars. And Justin says, a breathtakingly expansive and authentic recreation of the core Star Wars universe in Lego. Its gameplay is predictably simplistic at times, but literally everything else is stellar. At last, this is the droid you were looking for. So that feels pretty good. That's kind of what I hoped for with this game. Like, I'm not expecting, something that redefines what a video game is for a Lego game. And if it captures the magic of and expansive
it's no Elden Ring.
This really is no Elden Ring, and it could be. But on the other side of the spectrum, we have Tom Phillips from Eurogamer, and he was a little less glowing on his mainly because he didn't give it a recommendation, so no recommendation. And Tom says, for the most part, the game's film retellings are humorous if simple fun. There's nothing here you can't button mash or Lego brick smash through, and I particularly enjoyed Rise of Skywalker, where the film's often daft script is well sent up. After a quick tour, however, the game's open worlds held less pull, which is a much more eloquent way of sort of saying that this is no Elden Ring.
Yeah.
I think this is fair. Like, I'm not exactly sure how a Lego game is going to land for me these days. Like the ones I played were a decade and a half ago. Video games have changed. Will the simplicity still work? I think it probably will, but games have evolved to an extent as well. So the more I think about it, the more it feels like it would be hard for this game to shoot beyond the low 80s. So what do you think about the reviews we're seeing for Star Wars, Lego Star Wars?
Yeah, I think, I guess, I don't know. I think they're a little bit lower than I expected. I did kind of set the bar at about 85, but I mean, who cares? Reviews are kind of a mess at the end of the day. I feel like we need to contact Mr. Phillips here and just hash it out with Eurogamer. I need to understand their recommendation policy. Like, it feels like they're out here not recommending every video game, like, I understand Lego Star Wars may have some places where it falters, but his little snippet here doesn't quite sound like it's something he would actively not recommend to someone, you know.
Right.
So I don't know
Yeah.
if I don't know if we're misunderstanding their
No
policy,
recommend. It's a
or
delightful
or if they just
time,
only
pleasant through and
recommend,
through.
yeah, they only recommend 3 games out of the year. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, yeah, as far as the simplicity, I'm really excited about this game. I have I got to finish what's on my plate first before I can move on. Um, but this is near the top of my list to get to. It's something I've been anticipating. I've actually never played a Lego video game before. Um, so this will be a first time for me, and they seem like they're a treat. They seem like they're. I love that it's kind of satirical, or poking fun at some of the things that it's a little more self-aware of the moments in the
Mhm.
movies, or at least it seems to be from my perspective, from the marketing and everything. And I think it looks great. And as far as the scope and everything, it's funny you mentioned that, because I am so far into Elden Ring right now, and I'm in this weird place with that game where um, I both love it and never want it to end and can't get enough of it, but I'm also reaching the point of sheer scope that I'm just like, I think this might be enough Elden Ring. Like there is so much Elden Ring. Not every game needs to be that, you know. I think when it
Mhm.
comes down to mechanics, we need to see things evolve and not be dated. But as far as scope, I don't think scope always sets the bar for everything. Some experiences are fine to be what they are, and they're a nice reprieve from the larger experiences. And also, what I've heard about this game is that it's pretty large. Actually, I've been hearing um, mostly positive sentiment, and that there's a lot to do in this game, just a lot to collect and discover in mini games. And it just sounds like it's um, a huge odyssey through
Yeah.
all of the Star Wars films, which sounds awesome. It sounds like
You'd kind of
Lego somehow pulled off the largest
yeah,
Star Wars experience we've had.
you'd kind of expect it if they're doing the whole Skywalker saga. Like that's 9 films, so that's a lot to get through. Even if you're just hitting some of the key scenes in each movie, I mean, you have to imagine we're talking at least 5 scenes per movie, maybe more. So that's a lot to do. But I like the idea of there being more mini games and like alternative things to do beyond just sequentially going through levels. I'm kind of hoping for getting to do some pod racing, getting to uh,
Totally.
I don't know, do like Jedi training, or there's a lot of like peripheral Star Wars universe tasks that could be really fun in a way to let you be in the world a little bit more without everything being just, okay, here's the next mission, the next level. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
hoping that we get a good variety there. Like you said, just pure scope in itself isn't necessarily a good thing. I think getting the right mix of variety, the right moments of the cinematic kind of storyline is what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. So we'll have to, at some point, we'll get our grubby little hands on this thing, and we'll put out a Neverlag impressions review, sort of say maybe a full breakdown. But I'm excited for it, and I'm excited they were able to get this game out. I know there was some trouble during development, and this game took quite a long time. So it's nice to see them cross the finish line here and be getting pretty good reviews.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, let us know if you've picked it up, you're playing it, drop a comment. Excited to get to this. Also trying to get through Elden Ring and some other stuff first. So it might be a month or so before I actually get into this game, but looking forward to it. Our second story is the Xbox Series X becoming easier to find. There's an article from The Verge from a day or two ago. And in their article, they report that the Xbox Series X has obviously been one of the most challenging to find gaming gadgets since it was released near the end of 2020. Um, and they've said while always a little easier to get a hold of than a Sony PlayStation 5, getting one has all but required keeping track of restocks from multiple retailers on a day-to-day basis, lest you turn to purchasing one from price gougers, which is basically the experience that we see with PS5 as well. But The Verge goes on to say, but now we can say with fingers crossed that those days may be behind us. The Xbox Series X is readily available at a few retailers and has been for the past handful of days. What's more, you don't need any paid memberships or pricey bundles to be able to get one. This, coupled with the lowering costs and better availability of some desktop GPUs, is great news for gamers who want to upgrade to new hardware. And then they go on to talk about where you can find these right now, saying that if you just want the $500 console on its own, you can get that online from Walmart and Newegg. with minimal to your shipping prices to your home. That probably depends on region a little bit. Um, and then it looks like you may be able to purchase the Xbox Series X from Target for in-store pickup, but this is kind of depending on your specific store. I thought this was interesting because you and I have talked a lot in the past year plus about when will the availability of this type of hardware start to open back up. We struggled to get GPUs for our PCs last year. That took a lot of planning, a coordinated effort, and a lot of luck to land our processors and our GPUs. And we had similar issues with the PS5. We barely managed to get our hands on PS5s, and we were up in the middle of the night the news broke, for hours spamming Best Buy's website. And so I can only imagine that it's still very hard for a lot of people. This sounds promising, but before our show, I went and checked Walmart.com, and I'm not seeing the MSRP price. So Walmart has a kind of like Amazon, like a third party seller program. So you can buy the Series X at Walmart on Walmart.com for like $630, which seems like a slightly price gouged version. It's better than what PS5s are going for. Last I checked, those are going for like, eight, 900, 1,000 on eBay. But I found this an interesting article and then immediately was unable to find any near me. So it kind of feels like, is this really a sign of better times on the horizon in terms of hardware availability, or was this just a fleeting fluke of hope, of false hope? So curious to get your take on this. What do you think things look like for us for hardware availability?
I think it was a fleeting fluke. I think this was, I don't know. This kind of seems like just an article, just trying to get, I don't know. I mean, maybe there was some reality to it, but I'll believe it when I see it when it comes to, I mean, honestly, anything across the board with commerce, but especially tech. I just, I can't imagine that we're even months away at this point from seeing these main consoles in a store. Like, we're just so far behind, and I guess it's kind of tough to say because as the market continues to very, very slowly become satiated, right? The demand, you would think, will go down, and that's when we'll be able to finally meet demand and get these in stores. I don't know if we've gotten to that point. I don't, we don't have the data to say, oh, enough people have PS5s and Xbox Series X's in their homes that demand has kind of calmed down. And honestly, I haven't been paying too much attention to it since I got what I needed. So I don't know if scalper prices have come down on eBay or anything like that. But I don't know. It's just it's kind of funny because this is only a problem that kind of really became a huge problem about 2 years ago, and yet at this point, it's hard for me to imagine a future again where you can actually walk into a Walmart and pick up a Series X or a PS5. Like, that seems like a fairy tale to me. So I don't know. I don't buy it. Like you said, you couldn't find it immediately. I'll believe it when I see it, is kind of where I'm at with all this.
Yeah. I mean, scalper prices right now, the Series X is going for $600 to $700. So if you look on Walmart.com, it seems like they just have their third party options, which are in the $600 range. Which
Yeah.
is, the reason this article initially gave me hope is because they were like linking to the website. So I think there probably was some inventory that showed up for a couple of days. Maybe it was a little better. Like, it sounds like it lasted a couple of days instead of selling out immediately, which I guess is good. But now 2 days later, it's sold out again. And then PS5s are going for like $900 on eBay right now, which is just absurd.
Yeah.
Um,
I wish we had a little more reach. I know we don't have the reach we would need to ask this question, but I would be very curious to know if we had enough people, like people that are watching would be watching this channel, or any serious video gaming channel. Are there any out there who don't yet have the console of their choice, like 2 years later, almost 2 years later? If you're watching something like this, you're probably a little bit more than casual. um, it would be surprising to me if there's that many people in that
yeah.
category that don't have their console at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be really curious to know that too. And so I think part of inventory opening back up is going to be, like you said, saturation of how many customers in the market have gotten what they needed. I think the other piece of it is the ramping up of just processor and graphics card production, which is something that has been in the works for a couple of
For
years.
sure.
So
Yeah.
Nvidia and some of these other companies have been like opening up new facilities to produce more of these components. So I think there's a few things at play that will improve this, but I still think it's likely going to be into next year before we really notice a difference. And this is a case in point, right? Like we see this article 2 days later, I go and check and I can't find it anywhere near me. And the prices Walmart is offering are the low end, but still the low end of scalper prices. So,
Yeah.
we're here to crush your dreams, folks. Don't get your hopes up too
I
much.
agree. I think we're at least a year away from normalcy, especially since these chips, the metals needed for these chips are needed in just about every, like even vehicles, like cars. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, I think it's going to take a long time. So hopefully you have your console of choice or whatever you need at this point, because I don't know, it
It's
will only get easier, right?
mm-hmm. I think
Famous
so.
last words.
I do think it. I don't think it will get worse. I mean, who knows? But I really don't think it'll get worse. At least I think we've
At
been
least it's
feeling our
not
valleys for
raining.
a while. um, but yeah, it's going to be a little while if you're struggling to find these. It's going to be a while before you can walk into a Target or a Walmart and just grab one off the shelves. That smart fridge you're so excited about that has an iPad in the front so that you can play Skyrim on your Samsung Super Fridge. You gotta wait a little longer. It's not ready yet. So
It's
anyway,
also why you don't have a PS5.
it's also because you're not prioritizing the PS5. Um, let's move on to our third story. A Max Payne remake has been announced. So Remedy Entertainment will be partnering with Rockstar to remake Max Payne's 1 and 2. So Max Payne is a neo-noir third-person shooter game series. And it's named after the protagonist, Max Payne, set in like New York City, I believe, and he's like some type of detective police guy, and he's now a vigilante. I think his family was murdered by drug addicts or something. It's very much kind of Punisher esque, I guess, in that way. Kind of male broody type thing. We always laugh about, but these are pretty popular. I never was super into them, but I thought it was worth announcing because this was a fairly notable franchise. Did you ever play any of the Max Payne stuff?
I didn't. My first experience with Remedy was Control, and it was a fantastic one. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it had a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, it had a lot of references to Max Payne. Or am I thinking of something else? But I've never played any of the Max Payne games proper.
Yeah. Yeah, Control was great. If it had references to Max Payne, I certainly was not able to catch them because I haven't played them either. But yeah, this sounds interesting. I
Oh,
mean,
many. Here you go. Here you go. Many Max Payne references are made in Alan Wake. Alan Wake was a ton. There were a ton
uh,
of Alan Wake things in Remedy or in Control. So they seem to like to do that a lot, but it was not Max Payne. So no, not too much experience with this franchise.
gotcha. Well, I mean, the fact that it's the developer of Control is interesting. Not top of my list to pay attention to, but I will say it's on the radar. Do you think this is something you'd
Yeah, I mean,
consider, or you kind of need to see what it looks like?
yeah. Once I see what it looks like, I'm Remedy is a developer that is certainly on my radar after what they did with Control. I can't wait
Mm-hmm.
to see if they do more with that universe. And honestly, whatever else they do, I will be paying at least some attention to, because that was just a phenomenal experience. So
Yeah, maybe a Control 2, Back in Control. There you go, Remedy. There's a title for your second
free.
Control game.
Just
Yeah,
kidding. We'll
free of
need you to
charge.
pay for that.
Yeah, no, that's going to be 1 million US dollars sent, however you'd like to send it.
If you
Um,
need any more bad names for things, we're right here.
I think that is an incredible name, but yeah, so that's, I guess, for your radar if that sounds interesting to you. We have some other announcements though. Our fourth story, a new Tomb Raider was also announced. I feel like this probably doesn't surprise anyone. It was a more of when rather than if, but we got the official announcement from Crystal Dynamics. So they announced this during the State of Unreal 2022 that there would be a new Tomb Raider coming. Their general manager, Dallas Dickinson. That sounds like a comic book name. Like Dallas Dickinson definitely has like a superhero he turns into. But Dallas
Yeah.
Dickinson promised a high quality cinematic action adventure experience, which it's kind of a vague term, but that definitely sounds like what you'd expect of a Tomb Raider game. No gameplay was shown though. There was no reveal. I don't even think they had like a reveal title card or anything like that. So it's probably pretty early days. But Dickinson said that the team is looking to push the envelope of fidelity and is looking to create an experience fans deserve from Crystal Dynamics and Tomb Raider as a series. So this is cool. I think this is going to be the first Tomb Raider since Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which it's been 4 years or so. So I'd assume a few more years in development, which probably puts us at 6, 7 ish years between Tomb Raider games. So yeah, this will be cool to see. I think the one other thing I'd call out here is that they're going to be using Unreal Engine 5. Obviously, this is in the state of Unreal, so I think we can expect this game probably to look pretty good. What are your thoughts about the new Tomb Raider announcement?
Um, I don't know, mixed. I mean, it's like one of those franchises we always know there will be another one. Pretty much, it's kind of it's. I mean, maybe not as much as Assassin's Creed, but it's in that vein of like, why would they stop making these? So, the last one, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I believe that's what it was called, right? I found that one to be incredibly boring. Man, I lost the will to continue that game after a while. I think it was actually free on PlayStation Plus one of those months, and so I picked it up. And honestly, I don't know. I've had a hard time with Tomb Raider games in recent years, simply because, like, I fully appreciate the heritage and that they kind of, were the OG, right? But Uncharted really just does Tomb Raider better than Tomb Raider has done in the past decade, in my opinion, at least. So I the fact that it's in Unreal Engine 5 is exciting. I can't wait to start actual next gen and what is current gen, right? It feels like we've been floundering in past gen. And I think Unreal Engine 5 is a huge mile marker in the step of progress towards that. The more games we start to see being fully developed in this engine, I think we're going to finally see a noticeable step up in in the generation in quality that we're getting. So that's exciting. I hope it looks like, I mean, I remember when we first, when Unreal Engine 5 was revealed, man, that was 2 years ago now. That looked like a Tomb Raider game. I don't know if you remember, they revealed Nanite, and it was some female protagonist exploring through what kind of looked like a Grand Canyon area.
Yeah.
And it was like a tomb, and it was incredibly impressive. And I think we all kind of sat there and just went, man, like, I know this is a demo, but make this game. So maybe they'll be able to do that. And maybe that's what Tomb Raider will be. It'll just be like the demo we saw. But yeah, until I see something, they have a lot to prove for me, because, a name brand thing doesn't really mean anything to me if you get into it and it doesn't have the goods. So
Yeah.
it remains to be seen.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's worth keeping an eye on as it is a big name brand, but that's not a guarantee. I agree that Uncharted is basically our generation's Tomb Raider, but I would love for Tomb Raider to make a comeback. I think we've seen plenty of game franchises from the 90s, early 2000s that have managed to like enter into modern gaming with gusto. So hopefully that's something that can
Yeah.
happen with the next Tomb Raider. Something that might make you a little bit more eager for this is the Days Gone director Jeff Ross just announced on Twitter that he is leaving the studio that did Days Gone, and he's joining Crystal Dynamics as their design director. So presumably he'll be working on the new Tomb Raider game. I don't know what else he'll be working on. He didn't go into a ton of detail, but as design director, I like to think that maybe he'll bring some of the things that worked really well about Days Gone into Tomb Raider and
I guess
whatever
it
else he works
depends.
on.
I guess it depends on who you ask. Days Gone is such a divisive game. It did some things well, and it did some things, I guess, poorly. That kind of makes me wonder. I mean, I guess this could be anything, but I do wonder where they go with the Tomb Raider franchise. Do they continue to try and do what they do and just do it better? We don't really know if and when we'll ever get
Zombies.
another Uncharted game. Zombies. There you go.
Zombie
I
mode.
mean, really, Uncharted is kind of just stick a pin in it. We don't know if that's ever happening. I assume it will, because like Tomb Raider, it's become such a big name brand. But for now, we we don't know. And so I'd love to see Tomb Raider kind of be as good as Uncharted. It makes me wonder if maybe they'll try and go an open world route with it, which, could go either way. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sold on, if you tell me open world, I'm not sold. It needs to be a good open world. That could also make a game worse. I think we need more
Yeah.
linear games at times. So that's interesting though, that he's moved over there. Um, I don't know. I will definitely be paying attention when they announce some more information.
Yeah, for sure. Same. And I think Tomb Raider could be relevant. It's going to come down to the
Oh
basics.
yeah,
Like,
totally.
can they put together a good story? Can they write the story well? Can they do interesting things with the gameplay loop to make it fun and engaging? And ideally, can they evolve it a little bit so that it's not just what it used to be. So what that exactly looks like, I don't know. That Jeff
Yeah, it's
Ross
not
and the
my
rest of
job.
the team are going to have to figure that out. And we'll be here to criticize every step of the. No, I'm hopeful.
Yep.
I always want games to do well. I want everything to be fantastic. As much as it's fun to like tear things down and be snarky, I actually would prefer to just have good things to say about every
Oh
game.
yeah.
I just want all the
The
amazing
more good games
experiences.
we have, the better.
Yeah, just make me a
So
happy consumer. That was a weird sentence, but
put some NFTs put some NFTs in this Tomb
put
Raider
some
for Zach, for God's
put some
sakes.
NFTs in it. Well, you know what? Our next story is not about NFTs, but we do have a little bit about NFTs later.
Sorry.
So we'll get to
Oh,
we'll get
okay.
to those.
Can't wait.
We'll get to those. But let's go ahead and move on. Our next story, number 5, um, is actually something I'm really excited about. So, with the release of Elden Ring, which, as many know, was supposedly co-written with George R. R. Martin. So the FromSoft team, I'm not sure what this actually looked like, whether they just like had a
So
phone
I'm pretty
call
sure,
with George and he like threw out some
no, I'm
ideas,
pretty
or was
sure
he
he
like,
he built the universe and they wrote the story within it. So he didn't write the story. He just created the lore and the laws and the whatever that govern the world or the fictional
mhm,
universe. And then they kind of navigated within that
yeah,
is how I know it.
gotcha. You stole the thunder of my pretty bad joke. So I
Oh,
was
I'm
just going to
sorry.
joke that they had a phone call and he threw out a couple ideas. But the reason I was making the joke is because if you had told me like George R. R. Martin was part of this, it would be hard for me to tell exactly how. But I think the fact that he maybe worked on the universe, but not as much the story, makes more sense because it feels very much like a story that was delivered by the FromSoft team. But I mean, it's great. I like George R. R. Martin's stuff is cool. Elden Ring is fantastic. But the reason I bring that up is because it seems like FromSoft and Bandai Namco are considering
That was
other.
a good joke, by the way.
Uh, Thank you. I'll put in a laugh track. Then everyone will be just duped. Um,
Miyazaki just bumped into George R. R. Martin on like the subway train, and
yeah.
that's how the story just escalated from there.
And George is like, "What if you had knights?" And he's like, "Credit. There's a marketing opportunity here." And then George R. R.
Yeah.
Martin gets $10 million.
Oh my
But
goodness.
yeah, so the story for today is that another author, Brandon Sanderson, is apparently in talks with Bandai Namco for some type of collaboration. So Brandon Sanderson is one of the most popular fantasy authors of today. I've read a bunch of his stuff. He has some really, really cool books. And he is a huge fan of Soulsborne games. He loves Bloodborne, the Dark Souls games. I don't know if he's played Elden Ring yet, but I'm based on the way he's talked about the other games, I'm sure he'll love it. He's best known for writing series such as Mistborn, the Stormlight Archive. He also finished Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time novels. Um, and apparently, Bandai Namco sent him a huge package with the release of Elden Ring that had like a sword, a cloak, and other merchandise from Elden Ring in it, which makes me want
Oh,
to
that's the
become a
same package I got.
yeah, makes me want to become a famous fantasy author so that I can get a sword
Yeah.
with new game releases. But apparently, they included a note saying they'd be interested in collaborating with him on something, and Brandon Sanderson on one of his YouTube live streams on his channel said they're interested in perhaps doing something together, is what the note says. He said, I am as well, actually. This is how I roll. I actually have a pitch for them in the back of my head. So I may send them my pitch and see what they think. He's a pretty creative dude. And so I would love to see if he could help build a world in a Souls type game. It would be phenomenal. I think one of his strongest suits as a writer is incredible worlds, really cool magic systems and really integrating that into the world itself. So the idea of him actually working with the FromSoft team has me very, very excited. But very early days, like they're just talking right now. There's no confirmed things. So temper your expectations a little bit. These types of things can fall through pretty easily, but I'm pretty excited at that prospect. I don't know if you have any thoughts. I don't know if you know who Brandon Sanderson is, but yeah, if you have any thoughts, let me know.
Not a clue, but I don't understand his quote. This is how I roll. That fits very weirdly into his quote. I am as well, actually. This is how I roll.
Yeah, so you're kind of jumping
All
in
right,
like
man.
they pulled a quote from like a live stream where he's been talking about stuff, so it's kind of a mid context
Okay.
quote. His point was they
Like
contacted him and
he's just down to collab. Like I'm in for it.
basically they contacted him and said we'd love to work with you on some stuff, and he already has a plan for some of the stuff he wants to do. So
Right.
my
Okay.
guess
Cool.
is he already has ideas to
So
send to them, which would be cool.
yeah. So I don't have any reference of who this is, but I do think my 2 cents here is that I think this whole concept that was kind of has really started being talked about since this whole George R. R. Martin thing with From Software. I think it's a really cool concept because I mean it depends on your studio, but I have to imagine that if you're a studio just trying to crank out these games, and I say crank out, it still takes years. But imagine getting to the end of your project and then being like, getting ready for release date, and then like, all right, we got to do that again with something completely different. Like that sounds imaginatively exhausting. At a certain point, you're tapped out, and I think that's why we start to see so much repetition in the video game industry, at least part of it. Um, so I think it's a really cool concept that they did this, and clearly FromSoft are firing on all cylinders right now. Like they know how to make a game. They have the resources to make a game, and it seems like they're doing so incredibly efficiently right now because even if Elden Ring took 6 years, the amount of sheer square miles in that game and the way it all is perfectly put together and it just works. Nothing feels disjointed. Is truly impressive. Like their
Mm-hmm.
leadership and their efficiency is, I think, maybe unmatched at this point. They could stand to work on the technical stuff, but so that's really cool. That I think this is something maybe more studios should try, because sometimes the hardest thing when you're trying to create something is just to start. Like you don't know
Yeah.
where to start. You can't think of, if you're trying to write something, putting down the first sentence is the hardest part.
Yeah.
So tap into some of these resources that are kind of in the same genre as you that maybe have really cool ideas and want to build a world for you, and then that'll all of a sudden get FromSoft rolling much quicker. They're like, okay, cool, that gives me this idea they can pull
Mm-hmm.
from the universe. I think it's a really cool concept. I'm excited for whatever this might be. It also kind of makes me wonder, will we ever get sequels from FromSoft, man? Like we're all waiting for Bloodborne 2, which I don't think is ever going to happen from FromSoft because it's owned by Sony, unless Sony were to make a huge move and purchase FromSoft, which would be complicated from what I hear. Um, they seem to have moved on from Dark Souls as a named franchise. We might think, I really want a new Sekiro. I hope that they're working on that because it stands to reason, whatever this is, they kind of have an overlapping cadence, it seems, right? Sekiro
Mm-hmm.
overlapped with Elden Ring. So whatever they're working on aside from this is probably already in development. I hope it's a Sekiro. Um, but yeah, man, they're just at the top of their game. And I mean,
Yeah.
part of me wants sequels to these games that I love, but at the same time, if they keep doing something completely new that is also fantastic, like it's kind of hard to complain. So I'm
Yeah.
at this point, I'm excited for literally whatever they do. They have not dropped the ball as far as I'm concerned yet.
Yeah.
Graphical or technical performance aside.
I agree. The what you said about them being at their peak kind of performance is part of what has me excited because Brandon Sanderson is kind of at his peak in terms of fantasy literature output. He's known for releasing tons of fantasy books very regularly, and then almost all of them being really good. And he's super creative. He has some of the most interesting worlds and magic systems that I've read. And so the thought of like creative talent like his pairing with a company like FromSoft, who's able to translate these into such interesting worlds and gameplay experiences, could be awesome. And I think generally, I love the idea of leveraging talent, like authorial, writerly talent that some studios have great writing, right? And that's awesome. But collaborating with other powerhouse of writers and idea generators is only going to be good for us. So I'm excited. We'll stay tuned and see. I mean, these things take years, and like you
Yeah,
said,
another
I'm
five
sure
years
they
from now.
have something else in development. But yeah, tune in 5 years to Never Lag, and we'll let you know what's up. Let's move on to our sixth story. And this is just a brief update on PlayStation Plus. We talked about this last week as we kind of broke down the different tiers of this new quote unquote new streaming service, which is essentially a rebranding of PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus, pairing those together and then adding a couple of different tiers. But Jim Ryan was recently on an episode of the official PlayStation podcast, and they asked him about the games library of this new PlayStation Plus service. He was a little coy. He didn't give a ton of detail, but I thought it was worth kind of sharing what he said. And what he stated was, "I'm going to play a little hard to get on this one, but I can tell you free that we have massive publisher participation on this program. We have all the big names present." He further said, "We have big publishers, we have small indie publishers, we have over 200 partners working with us to put their content into PlayStation Plus. So the lineup is going to be really strong." So this could give us a little bit of a sense of like where they're thinking with this. It's vague. They don't give us titles. The exact titles are going to matter. And this very much feels like kind of the PR statement you'd expect, but it's nice to hear that they're actively working on it. Like it's not something that has zero attention from them, presumably. So yeah, any thoughts about Jim Ryan's quote here?
Not terribly. Once again, I'll believe it when I see it with this stuff. I'm really tired of hearsay and um, teases from Sony. Like I felt like they've been ever since the PS5 came out, they've been teasing us for 2 years. Like
Mm-hmm.
which isn't entirely fair. They've released a couple really good exclusives, but yeah, just so often it's the news with PlayStation is just so teasy, and so I don't know. Yeah, like you said, this is just this is just like vague amorphous hype you're throwing out into the ether. Like it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
mean anything until we see what these games are and what the cadence is like. I like that he says, um, what does he say? 200
200
partners
partners.
working with us.
Yeah.
So I guess at the end of the day, I'm more curious to see what third party stuff is on this because I know how Sony's going to operate. I know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm going to get. The earliest I'm going to see anything from them is a year. When did Returnal come out? Or it'll be about a year from when Returnal came out that it'll make its debut on this service. So I know what I'm getting from Sony. I want to know what I'm getting from these third party publishers, these indie publishers, because to me, that will make or break the service for me. And that will literally determine whether or not I change my subscription and move up a tier or I don't. Because if they have, I mentioned this last week, if they have Tunic day one, or these games like this that I typically would buy, but here they are on PS Now or what is it, PlayStation Plus Extra,
Yeah.
then yeah, I probably will be there. But yeah, we'll see.
Yep. I kind of just took this as okay. There's probably going to be some attention put into this. I'm mildly optimistic about the future of their service. I don't think it's going to be any Game Pass killer in any way, but yeah, we'll have to see exactly what's going to be included in here. Our seventh story is just a quick update, and it's related. That is that there are a few new titles to PlayStation Now, which, not to convolute it, but is going to change into PlayStation Plus Extra, as well as PlayStation Plus Premium. So either the second or the third tier of PlayStation Plus will include the PlayStation Now library of today. But some of the new titles that are included are Outer Wilds, Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood. It's quite a title. And WRC 10 FIA World Rally Championship. That's also quite a title. So three new titles. I mainly wanted to touch on this because Outer Wilds is on my list to play. A lot of people rave about this game. I think you've played it, and so this is kind of an exciting one to include in my opinion. But yeah, you enjoyed Outer Wilds, right?
Yeah. So I mean, contextually, my buddy Ralph over at Skill Up thinks it's the greatest game ever made, and I understand where he's coming from. I could. That's a valid opinion. I for some reason it didn't click with me the way the people that it clicked with. There's a sentence for you, right? It just didn't. I don't know. It didn't reach me the same way that there is an audience that thinks this game is just revolutionary, and I do think. From a game design standpoint, it is in a lot of ways. I mean, just the real time puzzle nature of the game. And we talk about games not being handholdy, and this game is not that. It's very much here you go. The universe keeps exploding every 15 minutes. Go figure out why. And from that standpoint, conceptually and everything, it's great. Um, I don't know. It didn't click with me quite how I wanted to, or how how sometimes people rave about a game, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I want to feel that. I want to experience that game, and then you play the game, and you're like, I didn't have the same experience. Kind of how it was for me, but I won't knock the game. It's very cool. There's a lot of cool things going on in it, and yeah, it'd be cool if you could check this out. We could talk
Yeah.
about it because it's definitely doing interesting things where too many games these days don't try to do something interesting, you know?
Yeah. Yep, for sure. I actually got this on an Epic Game sale on PC a couple months ago, and so I have it downloaded. I'm sure this second and third quarters of this year seem like they're going to be a little lighter in terms of game releases. So I imagine
Sweet.
I imagine I will
Yeah.
get to it in the coming months, but excited to talk about that. And for anyone else who's interested in playing Outer Wilds, if you have PS Now or you're considering PS Now, this might be a reason to check that out,
There you
as well
go.
as the other titles with long, complicated names that I
Werewolf the
mentioned.
Apocalypse. Go get it.
Earthblood, to be specific,
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean
or
the other one.
yeah, not whichever other one exists. So yeah, check that out, and your PS Now membership will be converted into a PS Plus Extra in June. So okay, next story number 8 is just a quick update on Stardew Valley. I don't know how much you know about this game or if you've played it. I haven't played it, but I've been interested in this game for years, for a few reasons. One is that it was created by Eric Barone completely by himself.
One
He did
dude.
this
Yeah.
one dude. He did everything. He did the animations, the game design. He did the writing. I think he did the music. Like he literally did everything for
Yeah,
this
man.
thing. And it is sold like he had to become a multimillionaire from
He
this,
made
and
it. He made it.
well deservedly. He's
Good
made
for
it.
him.
And Stardew
Yeah.
Valley, it's kind of like a modern cult classic, I'd say. Like it's not a major mainstream game, but it's pretty big within its niche.
Yeah,
And it
totally.
seems like a very chill. It almost has like Animal Crossing esque vibes in the sense that it's a very chill game where you're living in a world and you're planting things and talking to townspeople. But it's more of like kind of a 16-bit type animation
There
style.
there are dungeon crawling aspects to it too, right? I
I'm
could be
not
wrong, but
sure
I think you have to like adventure out and find certain things.
you do. I think you
So
have
I
to go out
think
and explore. There's more exploration in it than something like Animal
I've
Crossing.
heard I've heard nothing but great things about this from almost everyone. I mean, when it came out, it was
Mhm.
like people's game of the year. I mean,
Yeah.
this game just absolutely blew up. And if you're into those kind of chill sim games, it seems like it's really well rounded. So I've been meaning to check this out. I just never have. I never got around to it. And
Same.
I mean, typically that's not my style of game, but I don't know what I've seen. I've liked, so I intend to check this out at some point. It looks like a great Switch game or something of
Yeah.
that nature. So
I have the same thought. Like I've been planning to pick this up on Switch for a while, have never got around to it. But it looks great. These are not usually my type of game either, but I'm always down for like the best of any category. This seems like that. And the reason I brought Stardew Valley up today is because we have a slight update from Eric Barone about the follow up to Stardew Valley, which is a game called The Haunted Chocolatier, which is a very fun title. I don't at all know what to make of that, but from someone who's clearly a very talented game designer working on his uh, kind of sophomore endeavor. I'm excited to see whatever that's going to be. And so what he's confirmed is that the Haunted Chocolatier is going to have boss fights. And that just sounded very interesting to me. So we don't really have a lot of detail on exactly what these boss fights are going to look like. There's an article, I'll link it in the notes, where Eric talks a little bit more about his work on the Haunted Chocolatier and some of the things you can maybe expect. But I found that to be really cool that there's maybe going to be he talks in the article a little bit about how the follow up game is going to have a lot of elements that feel familiar to Stardew Valley, which I think is what we'd look for from that type of thing. But there's some evolution happening where there's going to be some type of boss battles mechanics. So I thought that sounded super cool. I don't know much more about it. Any initial impressions from you?
Yeah, I remember seeing this when it was revealed. I think it was last year. I thought it was rather peculiar. Not what I would have guessed as a sequel, as a follow up, but maybe if it has boss fights, it could cross a little bit more into being something I would more inherently be interested in if it can
Mm-hmm.
combine the obviously great elements of Stardew Valley with maybe a little more action. Who knows? I mean, I'm already a little bit down for Stardew Valley, so if this does
Yeah.
that, then I will probably be down for that.
Yep. Cool. Same with me. So stay tuned. I don't think we have a release date yet for Haunted Chocolatier. It was just, like you said, just
It seems
announced.
like it's still pretty early on.
Yeah, it was just announced September or October of last year, and then we just got a little bit more information in this article from that interviews Eric Barone. So we'll have to stay tuned, but it's always fun to see movement on like cool indie titles, I think the indie scene, the good indie titles are a really important part of what we have happening in gaming. Okay, our ninth and penultimate story: Epic Games raises $144 million for Ukraine, and this is just impressive in how much Epic Games has managed to raise. So, kind of the context with this story is apparently Fortnite had a DLC or some additional content released a month and a half ago that included some warlike themes. Like there was some in-universe, in-game war that breaks out, and you kind of pick a side or something. I may be
It was
getting this a
bad
little bit
timing.
wrong. I don't I don't play Fortnite, but yeah, the timing obviously was not a great look, and it was just kind of unintentional. But the way Fortnite and Epic Games have handled this, I think, is a first of all a really good show of like how to handle PR well, not trying to hide it, trying to minimize or act like they didn't do anything, but instead just donating proceeds from Fortnite for a period of time to relief efforts for Ukraine. And so what they decided is they said we're going to donate all Fortnite proceeds between March 20th and April 3rd, so about 2 weeks worth of revenue from this game, towards donations for stuff happening in Ukraine, which ended up, I mean, it's Fortnite, right? So that's $144 million. I just thought that was noteworthy that they really put their money where their mouth was. Like they didn't just like say some kind of soapbox statement or we stand with so and so, which corporations do it. Corporations need to do, and it's kind of whatever. But this is one of those moments where you're kind of like, wow, they really stuck to what they said they were going to do. They're giving away $144 million, which I think it's just nice to see companies that actually try and stick to some principles. At the end of the day, a corporation is just a machine trying to make profit. But it is nice to see when those are run by people who are trying to be conscious of the impact they have for the customers they serve, for the developers that they work and partner with, as well as for the community at large, which is kind of what Epic is, I think, doing here. And so obviously this is partly a self help play in terms of PR. Like they're trying to make it not a bad thing that they've released this poor timing DLC, but I think they've done it in a way that's obviously beneficial to multiple people, and so it's just kind of nice to see that type of behavior from a large corporation. Thought it was worth calling out, and so hope to see more companies like Epic Games who try and take these types of stands on things. So any thoughts about this?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even though it's obviously good PR, I don't think most companies would spend 144 million on good PR. So,
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, this had to come from somewhere genuine, at least on some level. Um, and yeah, I don't know. It's nuts. It's hilarious to think that the largest donation for humanitarian efforts over there in Ukraine is now Epic Games, a video game company that makes a game that you
In
know
Fortnite, no
all the
less.
all the youth of the world play and do
Yeah.
their floss dances in, and like that is where this money came from.
That's it, dude. That sounds like
It's
a
crazy.
Simpsons episode where there's a
Yeah,
war
it
breaking
totally
out,
does.
and Fortnite, the cringy video game, raises the most humanitarian effort versus like any political system. That's kind of what this sounds like.
It would be from that TV show. I can't think of the name where the rat continually just murders um, the Itchy and Scratchy show. That's what it would be from. But anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, it's nuts, and it's like you said, it's nice to see some semblance of companies um, having any sort of moral compass at all. You know, like and just trying to do what they can to not just succumb to the machine that is capitalism, right? And
Mm-hmm.
granted, I mean, Epic, they have made just more money than they literally know what to do with. But the fact that they're trying to create a better space for developers already and give a better split and try and make the market a little bit easier for the little guys out there trying to make video games. Um, say what you want about the war versus Apple. A lot of that had to do with what's good for Epic on a business level, but still, they were trying to fight for Apple to not take such a large cut of every app on their store,
Mm-hmm.
which kills again the little apps and the little
Mm-hmm.
businesses trying to take off. So
Yeah.
clearly, Epic, they fancy themselves the Robin Hood, and like you said, more often than not, we see them put their money where their mouth is. So it'd be nice to see other companies, more companies like this, because it's pretty rare.
Yeah. The cynical part of me thinks it's going to be the Harvey Dent thing, where it's like you're the hero until you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Which,
Yeah, it
but
will be.
hey, take it while they're the hero, and the more companies try and think like this, the better. So it's very very much a good thing. So yeah. All right, our final story of the day is the fan favorite Patch Watch. um,
I'll just see myself out.
yeah, just leave. Um, so Patch Watch is where
Oh
we look at
gosh.
recent patches that are of note, mostly to us. I'm sure there's a lot of patches we're missing, but Horizon Forbidden West released patch 1.11 this week. Um, and the main reason I wanted to call it out, we've talked about their patches for like over a month at this point. But what I've noticed in these patches is that the first 3 or 4 weeks post launch, every single patch started with, we're investigating with high priority, the urgent issues around the performance mode and the shimmering that the community is seeing in various visual settings. And then in the last patch from a week or two ago, they kind of walked it back, and they made it sound like it was partially resolved. And in this patch, they don't even talk about it. So it's apparently no longer an issue to them. It feels like they're kind of trying to sweep it under the rug. If you look into it, the known issues they have are all about quest fixes and other bugs, which, hey, it's good they're fixing those things, but it very much seems like their strategy all along has been, we know that this is broken for some people, we are going to act like we're trying to investigate it, and then we're going to let people forget, and we're going to move on, because it sounds like it's maybe an architectural issue where it would take a lot of effort to change what's causing this, which we've talked about. Maybe that's not even the case. I don't know. But it feels like they're trying to sweep it under the rug, and they're now not really mentioning the shimmering and visual fidelity issues at all in this. And that it kind of seems like they've moved on, which is frustrating. So yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like I know what
I
your
said I
reaction
would
is,
never
but
I
anything you
said
want to
I would
say?
never talk about Forbidden West again.
That's true. You
So
made a blood pact at the end
I
of
made a
last
I don't there's
episode.
no blood involved. No
There
blood.
was blood involved,
But
but let's go ahead and hear your thoughts.
I don't know. I have no other I am a little bit surprised to see that they don't even list it as a known issue. That's that's rather bold in my opinion.
Yeah.
To go from last week, like you said, it's kind of like they were making peace with it and just moving on. But man, to just straight up remove it from known issues, it's clearly still an issue. I agree. It seems like they had about a month plan here, where they were going to try and kind of feign working on this. And again, we don't know. Maybe they genuinely did try, but that's what it feels like at the end of the day when we get to patch 1.11 here. It feels like they kind of feigned, kind of like, oh, we're looking into this. We're right here with you. Let's figure out what's going on here. And then they're like, okay, we'll give that a couple weeks, and then we'll kind of say it is what it is, and then we'll just move on. And hopefully by then, there's not enough press and there's not enough backlash for it to really matter. Again, the game's already sold, you know,
Yeah.
just a ton. So kind of a bummer. Yeah, for it to be removed from known issues to me is not cool. But this whole
If
thing has been not cool, and it's kind of ruined it for me. So
my take is, if they sincerely tried to fix this and couldn't, they would have communicated that. They've been very communicative about certain things. And initially I was praising them for that. But now it feels like that's part of a strategy where they know that this is broken. So they're going to focus on all of the little minutia that is not as severe, that is easier for them to fix, so that we feel like, okay, they're making progress, and then we can move on and forget about it. And it feels calculated because they didn't say anything like, hey, we looked into this and it's an architectural issue. This is going to take us months to maybe fix. We're not sure we can fix it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Those would have been disappointing updates and would have rightly gotten some blowback from fans, but at least it would have been honest about where they are at. Like, hey, we're
yeah,
not planning to do anything more at this right now, or this might take us a year to figure out. But they just go silent. And that's what makes me think
yeah,
this is, and if you look
yeah.
on
At the end of
Twitter,
the day, go ahead.
I was just say, if you look on Twitter, there's kind of a similar sentiment where one guy is saying, is it still shimmering? I don't even want to reinstall for the 11th time to be disappointed. And, there's a lot of back and forth. It's Twitter, so it's a
Spoiler,
toxic
buddy. It
cesspool. But
is.
yeah, there's a lot of people who are like, yep, all the shimmering stuff is still right there.
Yeah,
So
I mean, at the end of the day, they never they never looked us in the eyes and told
as they
us what was
stabbed
wrong.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, like just be honest with your consumer
Yeah.
here. They never did that. They kind of just glossed over it and moved on. And so I don't know. What a bummer. I don't know what to do with this game. I will play it at some point, but it just sucks because, and it's so frustrating for me too, as I continue to listen to other podcasts or other people talk about games that have come out this year, and Horizon Forbidden West comes up, and especially reviewers who played it during the review process continue to rave about just how fantastic this game looks and how bar setting it is. And I can't reconcile, like, I don't understand. um I can't reconcile people's opinions in that matter. Like, I understand in resolution mode some TVs may look better, but this game just, I don't know. It was a massive disappointment visually for me and performance wise, and so I'm
Yeah.
I'm continue to be frustrated and shocked how so many people still think it's one of the best looking games ever released. I don't understand, but I
I
don't know.
mean, I
It is
think
what
if
it
you
is.
if you're one of the fortunate, one of the fortunate groups that have a TV that runs it well, and you're fine with resolution mode and you're willing to make the performance trade-off, um, it does. I do think it looks breathtaking at times, because on my TV, I have a new OLED TV, and I'm fine with resolution mode. I think more than some. I know some people, like, they just really prefer performance mode. If you're fine with resolution mode and your TV works, it might be a pretty good experience overall. That's kind of how I feel. Like, at first I was confused because there are some really breathtaking moments and vistas and environments, but you can't negate the fact that this is not working for a lot of people. Like, this is a very inconsistent delivery at best, in the most generous form, right? And so it's
Yeah,
hard to say this is breaking a ton of new ground when it's so spotty. And it's a bummer because, I like, some of the things I've seen, I want everyone to get to experience this, and just knowing that a lot of people aren't getting this experience, and it makes it more frustrating that the game in many ways is so great. So it's a bummer. I wish they would at
yeah.
least be honest and upfront about it and say, hey,
Yeah, at
you
this
know,
point, that's as I've said, that's all I want at this point, because I don't think I'm going to get what I actually want. All I want is for them to, like, actually be transparent about what happened here, why it can't be fixed. Um, that would be great, because this whole process really has felt patronizing to me, and I think to a lot of people. But I don't know. It seems like they've fully moved on, as we suspected.
yeah. So I guess we'll have to play other things in the meantime. I'll get to Horizon soonish, because it looks good on my TV. I feel like a jerk being like, well, I'm gonna go play it now.
Sucks
But
to be you.
they once again were overshadowed. Like, I got to get through Elden Ring first. That's my top priority. So
I know,
um,
isn't that funny?
as frustrating as all that is, like, we're living in a time where there is just a veritable sea of games for us to wade through. So we can go do other things in the meantime. But um, Yeah, that's all I got for the news this week. Is there
100%.
anything else from you?
100%. No, that's it. Thankfully for Patch Watch, there was only one patch this week in the whole of video games, and it happened to be Horizon Forbidden West again. So we're all done. And so, yeah, thanks for sticking with us today. We appreciate you if you stuck with us till the end. Remember, you can find us over on Patreon at patreon.com/Neverlag. And we will catch you next week on This Week in Gaming.